like a bee. I'ma get so rich and put a penguin on the beach.
Bro, why you yelling though?
I can't hear myself over the beat.
Okay, I got you. I'm gonna turn you up.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I'ma get so rich and put a penguin on the beach. Thought this was a track off, baby girl, this a G. It sound like it's clipping.
I know how to fix that. I'll just turn the fader down. Hey, man, can we please stop making game staging so difficult? It's really easy to understand. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Wavy Wayne from Wavy.wav. Now, this channel is all about helping you to record and mix better and faster. Now, today ain't no different, man. Y'all is always asking about game staging. I see this in my comments on Instagram. By the way, make sure you follow me. I see it in the comments on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe. And I see y'all tweeting at me. Nah, don't follow me there. Just joking. But yes, game staging is probably one of the most misunderstood topics in all of the audio recording world. And I'm here to simplify game staging for y'all with just about 4 easy steps, man. It's only about 4 points that we need to talk about today. And then game staging will forever be a whole lot easier for you. So let's go ahead and dive into my Pro Tools session. But it don't matter what DAW you're using. Even if you're using GarageBand, if you're using FL Studio, if you're using Logic, it doesn't matter. The game staging tips that I'm going to give you right now are going to be relevant to any DAW that you could be using. All right. So first thing first, what is game staging? Game staging is just simply making sure that you have the appropriate levels of your signal at all points. So the appropriate input level as you're recording, the appropriate levels going into your plugins as you're mixing, the appropriate levels to output when you are done with everything and you want to send it to a client. Now, how do we make sure that we're not clipping or we're not boosting in places where we should be cutting? All that, I'm gonna make it really simple, like I said, and break it down for you. So game staging, the first thing that we need to be aware of when we're talking about game staging, most of the time, let's talk about the microphone. When we are recording through a microphone, we have to use a microphone preamp to get this mic up to the perfect level for recording. Now, what is the perfect level? Some people might say -6, some people might say -8, some people might say -12. When I first started, I was a huge advocate of recording your mic level in at about a -6 dB full scale average, right? Now, I know I'm changing up a little bit and I'm going to say that we need to actually record a little bit quieter than that. So instead of -6 being the aim for your average input level, let's go ahead and start to aim for about -8 to -12. Now, what this is going to do is give us much more headroom so that we can avoid clipping. Nowadays, our interfaces and preamps are super quiet, so we don't really have to worry about getting that far away from the noise floor, but we do still need to worry about clipping. So you don't want to ever risk recording your signals too hot to where they might start to introduce the unwanted distortion into your recordings. It's better to record those a little bit lower than you normally would. That way you just are extra safe, okay? Now, inside of my Pro Tools session, let's take a look here. There's all kind of meters that you could possibly be looking at. Here's a couple of things that I always do. First, go ahead and right-click on the meter, and I like to use the Pro Tools Classic metering. Now, you can switch to any of these other ones after this point, but right now, let's just use that Pro Tools Classic meter. And when I'm looking at the input, after I arm this track, let me just go ahead and arm it now so you can see. When I'm looking at this meter, right, where I pretty much want to land at is between -8 dB, which is going to be somewhere around here, and -12. So in between, like under the 6 and a little bit under the 10 is kind of where you want that average input level to be. And I say about an average. So ultimately, if you are peaking at about -10, where I'm at right now, that's going to be the perfect level to record at. That's giving me about 10 dB of headroom before I ever even reach clipping or get close to it. This way I can be even dynamic, I can get excited, I can get loud and not worry about clipping or distorting my input, okay? So you want to, again, aim for a input level as you are recording, and the only way to do this, and no matter what DAW you are working in, is by adjusting your preamp. Now, your preamp might be on your audio interface, it might be on your actual hardware preamp, but those are the only two ways that we can change that input level. Now, other ways include like moving the microphone closer or further away from the source. So if I'm recording like a whatever it is, maybe get it further back. You see, I'm getting quieter, and the closer that I get, we get a bit louder. So that could be another way to adjust your signal's input level, is by moving closer or further away from the source. And also, if the source that you are recording has an output level or volume level, you can also use that to adjust, or you can just use the preamp. Moving this fader, as you can see, is not going to do anything. The faders inside of your DAW are only going to adjust the signal's output level for that track. They're never going to affect the signal's input level. So now that I've got my signal set by adjusting my preamp or moving my mic closer or further from the source, or even turning up or down the volume on whatever I'm recording, like a keyboard or guitar or something, now I'm actually ready to record. While I'm recording, I want to see a good, strong signal level. If the waveforms are super small, that is a great indicator that you are recording too quietly. Now, if they are super large, then that's probably an indicator that you are recording too loudly. Now, in Pro Tools, you can adjust the waveforms, like you can zoom them in. If I go up to my little waveform zoom here, right? So this could give you a distorted picture of what the actual signal level is, which is why you want to be watching the meters. But you can always reset the size or the zoom level of the waveforms simply by just double clicking on the magnifying glass here, your zoomer tool, and then it'll reset it back to the default. So this looks like a nice, strong, healthy level recording right out the gate. So that's step one, is to adjust the preamp level as you're recording to about a -10, right? Somewhere between -8 and -12. And again, we're going to be using those Pro Tools Classic meters, or whatever kind of class of meters, whatever it is you want it to be, a dBFS meter, right? So we're looking at dB full scale, and we want to look at the peak. So our peak of our incoming signal should be relatively about that -10 dB. Now, let's say that you aren't recording and you're actually going to be doing some mixing. Well, nothing changes there. The signals before you start mixing, you ultimately want to have those to be around that same optimal level, about a -10 dB. So here's something that we can do. Pro Tools provides a nice little feature called clip gain, and a lot of other DAWs have a similar feature as well. With clip gain, you can basically go in and then change the level. See, this is not zooming. This is actually changing the level of that signal. And it's a pre-fader, a pre-insert change. So using clip gain would be the first line of defense on anything that I do if I'm going to be mixing, right? So if I'm going to be mixing and I realize, hey, I got a signal that's less than optimal level, or it's a little bit too loud, I can use clip gain to bring that up or bring that down, so that once I'm working inside of my plugins, everything is going inside those plugins at a good level, and I have a good strong signal to start my session with. So clip gain would be another way that we could appropriately start to gain stage in our mix during the beginning stages, or maybe a mix. Or if you just recorded something and say, hey, you know what, this part of the recording just happens to be a little bit too quiet. Clip gain will allow me to separate that clip and then go ahead and raise that level up. I just hit the letter B on my keyboard to separate that clip. And now you see I have a more even level across the whole of the recording. Now, sometimes we don't want to use clip gain, or maybe our DAW doesn't include clip gain. Most of the DAWs will also include some type of a trim plugin. Now, if your signal is not up to optimal level, I would recommend that you add a trim plugin as the very first plugin in your chain. Now, why do it first? Because plugins are processed in series from top to bottom when you insert them on a track. So if I put the trim plugin as my very first plugin, then all of the other plugins will be receiving that optimal level that I've just set. Plugins can add or boost gain to your signal as well. So when you are mixing, you definitely want to be looking out on the input and output meters of those plugins to make sure that you're getting relatively back to the level that you started at, which was the optimal level. So once you go into the next plugin, you're hitting that plugin at an optimal level as well. Because if you do too much boosting inside of here and start distorting the output, well, then you're going to be sending that distorted signal into another processor, which is going to just compound the problems into your mix, and we don't want to do that. All right, so now let's talk about mixing. All right, we talked about this recording. Let's talk a little bit about mixing. Now, when I'm mixing, and I have multiple tracks, what I am looking for is I'm going to be using a VU meter. So let's say most people are going to create a master fader, right? The master fader will control and monitor the output levels of your entire mix. As the very first insert on your master fader before you start mixing, this is what I would do. I would go click on that insert, and then you can search for this VU meter. If you use Waves, they also have some free VU meters that you could download out there. It really doesn't matter which VU meter you use. I like to use this actual hardware one as well. It's just attached to my outputs. If you don't have nothing like that, this plug-in VU meter works just as good. It's no problem, right? But what I do like to do is set my headroom. Instead of being -18, I like my mixes to be a little bit louder than that. So I'm going to go to -15. That's just going to give me an extra 3 dB of headroom on my mix so I can just mix a little bit louder, right? So I can have my overall mix just be a little bit louder. So my headroom is going to give me -50, okay? -15, I'm sorry. So that means whenever this needle on my VU meter is hitting 0, that's really -15 dB for my overall mix, okay? So if I start to compound this, and this works best when you have multiple inputs. So I'm gonna just bring multiple channels. I'm gonna just bring in a beat or something real quick into this so we can see as I'm setting the levels. And my VU meter ultimately, and let's move my vocals down. Now, typically when I'm setting my beat, let's start there. When I'm setting my beat, the first thing I want to do is make sure that my beat, right, is going to be on my VU meter, kind of hitting around the loudest part of my beat, or kick, or 808 if you're mixing individual tracks. I want the loudest part to start to hit around 0 VU. So I just want to keep this open the whole time. And let's just jump to a point where we got some drums. So you see right now, beat is too loud, it's slamming. I could come in and use my clip gain to back that down. Okay, a little bit of overs is gonna be fine, but I kind of want that needle to be bouncing right about that 0 VU. Okay, that's gonna be good. That's gonna be a good level for me. And then as I got that beat hitting at about that right level, most of everything else is going to kind of fall beneath that, right? So as I'm setting my vocals large, then that's probably an indicator that you are recording too loud. With the loudest part of my beat kind of hitting around 0 VU, I'm going to be good. I don't have to worry so much about the gain staging anymore, right? I guess I just keep an eye on my VU, and as I'm adding more and more elements, just keep an eye on that VU meter. And that's probably an indicator that you are recording too loudly. Now, in Pro Tools, you can adjust, right? And now, if I mix my entire mix by just simply looking at a VU, after I do that, I'm not worried about the peak meter on my master so much, or on my mix bus so much, because if I'm calibrated to -15 dB on the VU meter, then I should have ultimately an average of about 15 dB of headroom throughout this mix. Super large, then that's probably an indicator that you are recording too loudly. Now, in Pro Tools, you can, once you start to actually, once you're done with your mix, you should do your entire mix. Simply make sure that each track is appropriately at the right gain stage level, right? Gain stage to the appropriate level, about -10. And then as you are mixing, just keep your eyes on that VU meter. Make sure that it's kind of hitting right around that 0 during the loudest parts. And then you're going to be golden and ready to start adding any mix bus processing or mastering processing that you're going to be using. And that is a whole nother discussion, a whole nother video that if y'all want to see, drop down in the comments and let me know. I'm Wavy Wayne from Wavy.wav.com. This has been gain staging made simple. I hope this has really cleared up the whole gain staging process for you and let you know, hey man, there's really only 4 steps. Make sure that you got your preamp set right. If not, use some clip gain, maybe a little trim plug in, and then throw you a VU meter on your mix bus to make sure that overall your average levels are just about hitting at that -15 dB when calibrated to at about 0 VU when calibrated to -15 dB, man. Y'all be dope.